Hello, my name is Zachary Kosowski. I am a current Ferris State University student in the automotive engineering degree program, and I'm applying for the college summer internship position at Yanfeng, and I look forward to meeting you guys. Hopefully this impresses you guys enough so I can face-to-face interview with you guys. And yeah, I'll get started. I have the questions pulled up to the left here, so when I glance over, it's just to reflect on the question. To start, you guys asked when I was a kid, who did I want to be when I grew up? And to be honest, when I was really little, I wanted to be like most kids, a firefighter or an astronaut, or especially a race car driver, which got me into cars. But as I got a little bit older, about before I hit like 8 or 9, around that age, I started looking at my grandfather, who was very successful his whole life. He didn't have to serve in World War II because he was a really good machinist and he was really good with aluminum. So he made guns and made armor and he made all sorts of things. And he was really successful in his whole life and always made time for his family. And when I was really young, I used to work on tractors with him all the time and weed whips and just push lawnmowers. So he's who I wanted to be when I grew up. From that age on till even now, I'd love to turn into my grandfather. So he's definitely who I wanted to be when I grew up. And give an example of when I had to work with someone who was difficult to get along with. How did you handle the interaction with that person? Well, this past summer, I was working for an electrical company that we do like industrial type things and not just residential. And we were working at the Buddy's Pizza they were putting up at the Detroit Zoo. And one of my coworkers, who was unfortunately one of my higher ups too, was just terrible to work with. Severely poor work ethic. He just didn't get along with anybody. I always tried my hardest to make sure that I got along with him. Made sure things got done even when he didn't contribute. I just informed my supervisors, and I just had to endure it for a couple weeks until finally they looked into it and realized, hey, this kid's not worth having in the company. He made the company look bad. He didn't really get much done. He slowed production down. So I just endured it until they did something. I did what I was supposed to do. I didn't take matters into my own hands. I just informed them, let them know, and then it kind of turned their eye towards him so they could see exactly what was going on. Moving on, what are the 3 things that are most important to me in a job? Opportunity for advancement. That's a big one for me. I want to be able to start at a company and learn like as much as I possibly can and grow with the company and work my way up to not have to retire at the same place I started. So there's definitely I really value that a lot as opportunity for advancement and to prove myself. Then have a positive work environment is another one. Somewhere where everybody mutually respects one another. Anywhere from the owner of the company to somebody on the shop floor, just people get along. They're productive and safe working conditions for everybody alike. That way, everything's smooth and gets done right and gets done productively. And then third I would have to say someplace that I can work, that my job, I enjoy it so much that I really can't even consider it a job, because if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I'd like to be old and have the opportunity to say that I worked at Yanfeng and I enjoyed every day of work, that I didn't even really work, just went in, did my job, and couldn't even consider it work because I liked it so much. Moving on again, we have give an example of an occasion when you used logic to solve a problem. I was about 19, 20 around that time, and I had a 2004 Volvo S60R. I was turning left, and I hit a patch of ice and ran right into a giant snowbank that had just turned into a giant ice ball, and it bent my engine cradle along with my unibody. I could not afford to get that fixed, so I had to fix it myself. Now, the problem was with that is I had to think of a way to bend the unibody bolt hole back, because I got a new engine cradle for pretty cheap on Craigslist, but the bolt hole was cocked back about 35 degrees. So what I ended up doing was I created a rig in my parents' garage where it was on jack stands, and I used a piece of wood in front of it with some foam so I didn't scratch or dent my bumper, to hold the Volvo there on the jack stand so it wouldn't rock off. And then I used a come along that I anchored a piece of angle iron with a big piece of angle iron with some holes in it to the concrete floor in my parents' garage, and that way I could heat it up just enough to where I can crank it ever so slightly here and there. You didn't want to do that too much or too fast, because that would just wreck it and completely ruin the integrity of the car. So about 3-4 days, it was about 3 days of going out there, heating it up, and then just slightly cranking it, bending it, letting it cool off, come back the next day. I was able to bend it back to where it was perfectly 90 degrees, and put the new subframe on and drove straight as an arrow. So there's what I had to do for a logical solution to a problem. And then what was the first thing I ever designed? In 5th grade, I chose to do an invention instead of a research project for the science fair. My job at my parents' house at the time was, along with other chores, was to fill the dog's water dish up all the time. And now this was a pain in the butt. I decided to have an automatic dog water bowl filler. I didn't know there was really any designs out there. I was really young, and I decided to use I stole a little bit of the idea from a toilet, how they work, and I used the device in the back of a toilet that actually, once the water level got low enough, it opened up the valve and allowed water to come in. So I used my parents' downstairs sink, and I had to demonstrate this at school, so I ended up having to do it outside. But I used a Y handle on my parents' sink, so that way water would go in one end and go to my device, and the other end you could open up and still use it as a sink. And it came into a reservoir that also had a bottom part built into it that was the bowl itself, and the reservoir held water in it. And then once the water level went down enough in the actual water bowl itself, the pressure allowed the water in the reservoir to go into the bowl and fill it up. Well, then when the reservoir got low enough, it opened up, it lowered the plunger enough to where it opened up the valve to allow water to come in. And I ended up getting, I think, 100% on that project or something, but I just remember I was really happy with it. However, my dog did not like going downstairs to drink his water that he was used to getting out of the kitchen his whole life. So I had to find a way to run a hose upstairs if I actually wanted to work in my parents' house. But that was the first thing I ever designed. It worked beautifully, and if I were to go back to it today, I probably could have made some more improvements to it. But that's just one of many things I designed. The first thing I could think of off the top of my head. But yeah, thank you very much for this interview opportunity. I look forward to meeting face to face with you guys, and yeah, have a wonderful day and stay warm. It's really cold outside.